Hi, I'm Doug Ballinger. I'm Logan's dad, and this is Logan's voice. If you've been following this podcast, you already know that my son Logan died from fentanyl poisoning in May of 2020. Since then, I've dedicated my life to telling his story, not just so the world remembers him, but so other families don't have to experience the same nightmare we did. And that story, Logan's story, is now a book. It's raw, it's real, and it's written from the heart of a grieving father trying to make sense of the senseless. It's called Logan's Story, and it's available on Amazon. You can go to logansvoice.com for links to the book on Amazon. And if you want to understand this crisis through the eyes of a dad who's lived it, I hope you'll give it a read. But today, I want to go deeper than statistics or headlines. I want to speak directly to someone who often gets left out of the conversation, the father. In nearly every support group I've attended, every awareness rally, every advocacy campaign I've been a part of, the most visible and vocal people are the mothers. And let me say this clearly. I admire them deeply. They are powerful. They are relentless. They are warriors. But where are the dads? Where are the fathers who cry in silence, who hold their grief like a secret, who feel like they have to keep it together even when everything inside them is falling apart? In this episode, I want to talk about what it means to be a father who has lost a child, how our grief is often invisible, not because it's smaller, but because we're told to hide it. This one's for the dads, the broken, the quiet, the angry, the proud, the exhausted. Because dads grieve too. And today, this dad, me, is going to speak. Let's get into it. It's a question that's been weighing on me since I first entered this world of advocacy and grief support. Where are the dads? After Logan died, I went searching for connection. Someone who understood what I was going through. I joined support groups, attended vigils, listened to podcasts, and showed up to events honoring lives lost to overdose and fentanyl poisoning. And over again, I saw the same thing. Mothers everywhere, speaking, crying, organizing, building coalitions, running nonprofits, holding photos of their children at rallies, standing in front of lawmakers, demanding change. And the dads? Most of the time they weren't there, or if they were, they stood quietly behind the scenes, nodding, grieving, helping with the setup, driving the car, carrying the chairs, present but not speaking, watching but not sharing. And I get it. As men, we're not always handed a seat at the table when it comes to grief, especially the kind of raw, emotional, soul-wrecking grief that comes with losing a child. And even when we're invited to sit down and speak, most of us don't, because we've been taught our whole lives to be strong, to protect, to stay composed, to fix things. But what happens when the one thing you want to fix, the death of your child, just can't be fixed? What happens when strength means admitting that you're shattered? There's no playbook for that. And so we retreat. We go quiet. We go to work. We take care of others. We avoid the conversation. We convince ourselves that our role is to support, not to fall apart. But here's what I've learned since losing Logan. That silence doesn't protect us. It isolates us. That strength doesn't mean holding it in. It means having the courage to speak out. And that our grief as fathers matters just as much. Because if we keep waiting for someone to ask how we're doing, we may wait forever. Sometimes we have to step forward, take up space, and say, I'm not okay, and I miss my child too. So to every dad who's lost a son or daughter and feels like no one sees your pain, I see you, and this podcast, this moment, this is yours. Because there's power in a father's voice, and it's time for us to use it. So, if you want to understand why so many fathers seem absent from grief spaces, you have to go back to the beginning, to the way we as men are raised to process pain. From a young age, boys are taught a very specific script. Don't cry, man up, be tough, get over it, and don't talk about it, just fix it. And for many of us, that conditioning runs deep. We carry it into adulthood, into fatherhood, and yes, into our grief. When Logan died, people told me I was handling it well. You know what that meant? It meant I wasn't breaking down in front of them. But what they didn't see was the storm inside, the guilt, the rage, the ache that never stops. The late nights laying awake, staring at the ceiling. The tears I didn't let anyone see. The way I talked to him when no one else was around. The pressure in my chest that never quite lets go. Men grieve in silence, not because we want to, but because we've been told that's what strong men do. We become protectors, providers, problem solvers, even when we're the ones bleeding inside. And in the face of unimaginable loss, the loss of a child, that silence becomes a prison. Some men throw themselves into work, some withdraw from their families, some lash out in anger, some develop addictions of their own, and some don't survive at all. Grief is not just sadness, it's identity collapse. Who am I now that my child is gone? Who am I if I couldn't save him? What's left of me? And as men, we don't often have the words or the permission to ask these questions out loud. That's why you rarely see a dad at the microphone. That's why they don't come to the support groups. That's why they ghost the conversations. But that doesn't mean they're not grieving. It just means they're grieving in a world that doesn't know how to hold their pain. So let me say this as plainly as I can. Fathers cry too. Fathers shatter too. Fathers scream into pillows, break down in their trucks, collapse behind closed doors. They just don't always feel safe doing it in public. And I'm here to challenge that, not just for myself, but for every man who's walking through hell with a locked jaw and a bleeding heart. You don't have to grieve like anyone else. But you do have to give yourself permission to feel it and to let someone in, because strength isn't silence. Strength is honesty. Let's talk about what grieving fathers really need. Not what people assume, not what society offers, but what actually helps a dad who's lost a child and is still standing in the wreckage, trying to find a way forward. First and foremost, we need space to speak without judgment. That doesn't mean we want to sit in a circle and cry with strangers, although some of us do, and there's no shame in that. But it does mean we need a place, physical or emotional, where we can let down the armor, a place where someone asks, "How are you holding up?" and actually wants to hear the real answer. Because the truth is, most people ask the mother how she's doing. Most people check in with her first, or her only, and they should, absolutely. But grieving fathers often get left in the background, expected to be the strong one, the rock, the guy who just keeps going, even when we're breaking down. And that's the second thing we need, permission to fall apart. We may not cry in public. We may not write long posts. We may not share a photo every day. But that doesn't mean we're okay. It means we don't know how to grieve out loud or whether we're allowed to. We need to be reminded there's no one way to mourn. That some men process grief while fixing a car, or hiking alone, or writing in secret, or going silent for a while and then suddenly unloading it all in a burst. We need support that's built for how men grieve, not how others expect us to. That might look like peer support groups just for fathers, one-on-one walks or work sessions where grief can flow side by side instead of face to face, opportunities to take action, to advocate, to build, to lead, creative outlets, woodworking, journaling, music, podcasting, spiritual support that acknowledges anger, confusion, and doubt. We also need language that reflects our experience. Words matter. When someone says he overdosed, it implies shame. When someone says he died from fentanyl poisoning, it implies injustice. And for grieving fathers who often carry guilt on their backs like a cross, that shift in language can make all the difference in the world. We don't need pity. We don't need people to fix us. We need presence. We need people who will walk beside us, not ahead of us or behind us, but right next to us, even when we go quiet. And we need to be reminded that our child's story still matters, that their name should still be spoken, that we have every right to grieve in our own way and at our own pace without being pushed to move on. We're not broken, we're wounded. And what we need most is what grieving hearts need: to be seen, heard, and loved without having to ask. You don't choose this path. You don't wake up one day and say, I think I'll become an advocate for overdose awareness today. You get there because something or someone was taken from you, and the grief was just too loud to ignore, and the silence around it was too deafening to accept. That's how I got here. After Logan died, I didn't know what to do. I was lost, broken, angry, and drowning in the kind of pain that doesn't have a name. But what I did know was this: I couldn't let his story disappear. So I started writing. Then I started talking. And eventually I started advocating. And let me be honest, it wasn't easy. It's still not easy. As a man, as a father, I had to push past every instinct that told me to shut it down, hold it in, and move on. But the more I spoke, the more I realized I wasn't alone. And there were other fathers out there watching, listening, grieving. They just hadn't found their voice yet. And that's why I'm doing this, not just for Logan, but for every dad who thinks his grief doesn't belong in the conversation. Because it does. You do. Advocacy looks different for every person. It doesn't have to be public speeches or press conferences. It can be. And it could be telling your child's story in a town hall, wearing their name on a t-shirt, starting a scholarship or planting a tree, talking to your other kids about what happened, helping someone else's child get into treatment, or simply saying, my son died and I'm still here. Because there's strength in vulnerability, and there is honor in remembrance, and there is something sacred about a father speaking his child's name, even after death tries to silence it. Every time I say Logan's story, I'm refusing to let him become just another number. Every time I say Logan's voice, I am using my voice to give his story purpose. That's what advocacy is. It's love in action. It's fatherhood even after death. It's saying my child's life mattered, and I'm going to make sure the world knows it. You don't need a platform. You don't need permission. You just need the courage to show up in your truth as a grieving dad who refuses to be silent, because silence doesn't save our children. But maybe, just maybe, our voices can save someone else's. So now I want to speak to the father who hasn't spoken out yet. Maybe you're listening to this in your truck, parked somewhere you don't have to explain your tears. Maybe you're at work pretending everything's fine while your heart aches beneath the surface. Maybe you've never said your child's name out loud since the funeral because it still knocks the wind out of you. Maybe you're angry or numb or just tired of pretending you're okay. This is for you. I want to read something I wrote, a letter to the kind of dad I used to be, the one trying to hold it all in. Dear Dad in the Shadows, I see you. I see the way you flinch when someone says, I can't imagine losing a child, and you smile politely instead of screaming, I hope you never do. I see the strength it takes to carry your grief in silence because you were taught that real men don't cry, even when their world is falling apart. I see how you worry about talking about it too much will push people away, but not talking about it feels like betraying your child's memory. I see the ache in your eyes when you hear your child's favorite song, the way you tighten your jaw at holidays, the way you try to keep it together for your family, for your job, for the image of strength that you think you have to uphold. But here's the truth. You don't have to carry this alone. You don't have to be the strong one every day. You don't have to earn your right to grieve. You're already living the unimaginable. That makes you strong enough. Say their name. Cry when you need to. Tell your story. Or don't. Not yet. Just know that when you're ready, there's a place for you. Here. You're not invisible. You're not weak. You're not alone. You are a father. And your love didn't die with your child. Neither did your voice. With you in dark, another grieving dad. We don't say this enough, but we should. Men feel deeply. Fathers love fiercely. And our grief deserves to be seen. If you're a father listening to this episode today, whether your loss is fresh or it's been years, I want you to hear this. Your grief matters, your pain is valid, and your voice is needed. You don't have to grieve like anyone else. You don't have to be loud or poetic or even public. You just have to be real with yourself, with your people, with the memory of your child. I know what it feels like to carry this kind of sorrow through a world that expects you to man up, to nod your head at the funeral while holding everyone else together, to stand in the background of the photos while people ask, how's she doing? And forget to ask how you are. I know what it's like to wake up on a random Tuesday and feel like the grief is going to split your chest wide open. I know what it's like to hide it, to swallow it, to bury it beneath 1,000 unspoken I'm fines. But I know also what happens when you find your voice. For me, it started with Logan, and it continues every time I say his name, every time I tell his story, every time I refuse to let the world forget who he was and what took him from us. So let me say this again. For the dads in the back, the dads in the dark, the dads holding it together with duct tape and prayer, you are not alone, you are not weak, and you are still a father. You are still your child's dad, even if they're not here to say it back. And if you've been waiting for permission to grieve in your own way, you have it right here, right now, from one grieving father to another. And for those of you listening who haven't lost a child, but know someone who has, please check in on the dad too. He may not say much. He may not show it like the mother does, but believe me, he's carrying a mountain on his back. And sometimes all he needs is someone to look him in the eyes and say, I see you and I remember your child too. Before I go, let me remind you that Logan's Story, the book that tells my son's truth, is available now on Amazon. It's not just a book. It's a lifeline, a warning, a love letter. And I hope it helps someone out there feel less alone. You can also visit logansvoice.com for links to more episodes of my podcast. Or just pick up something from our Logan swag store. not just to support this mission, but to wear the message and make a difference. My name is Doug Ballinger. I am Logan's voice. I am Logan's dad, and I will not be silent any longer.